The sick granddaughter. The sun was angrily hot. An old Indian, thin and ragged, was plodding along a dusty country road that ran through alternating fields of wheat, maize and oats. In his arms he carried a child covered against the sun with a little blanket very much the worse for wear. The child's eyes were half closed. An enormous tumor bulged high on its neck. Whenever the old man stumbled, the child groaned hoarsely and its eyelids quivered. Then the old man would stand still to blow into its face. "If only I can get it there alive," he whispered and quickened his pace. Once in front of the steel gate, the old Indian shifted the child onto his left arm and gave the side door 4 raps with his right hand. He had a glimpse of an eye through the spy hole, the bolts rattled and the door swung open. The Indian stepped timidly inside. Standing in front of him was a white-smocked old black with a head of snow-white hair. "I brought a sick child," the Indian said. The black nodded, shot the bolts home and motioned to the Indian to follow. The Indian looked round him. He found himself in a small prison-like court, paved with big flagstones, with not a blade of grass anywhere. A wall lower than the outer one divided the court from the rest of the estate. At the gateway in the inner wall stood a large windowed whitewashed building. Near it squatted a group of Indians, men, women and children. Some of the children were playing jackstones with shells, others were wrestling in silence. The old black saw to it that they did not disturb the peace of the place. The old man eased himself down submissively in the shade of the building and started blowing into the child's bluish inert face. An old Indian woman squatting down beside him threw a glance at the pair. "Daughter?" she asked. "Granddaughter," the Indian replied. "It's the bog spirit has entered your child. But he's stronger in any evil spirit, he is. He'll bring the poor thing back to health." The Indian nodded. The white-smocked black, who was making a round of the sick, stopped in front of the Indian and beckoned to him to go in. The room that the Indian entered was big and bare, except for a long narrow table, covered with a white sheet, standing in the center of the flagged floor. A second, frost glass paneled door was opened and in strode Dr. Salvatore, a tall, broad-shouldered, dark-complexioned man wearing a white smock. The black eyelashes and eyebrows were the only hair on his head. He must have taken to shaving his hair long ago, for it wore as good a coat of tan as his face. An aquiline nose, a jutting chin and tightly compressed lips lent to his face a cruel, one might say, predatory expression. The cold look of his brown eyes sent little shivers down the Indian's spine. The Indian made a low bow and stretched his arms with the girl in them towards the doctor. With quick, sure and yet careful hands Salvatore took the sick girl from the Indian's arms, unwound the rags with which she was swathed and tossed them very neatly into a receptacle in the corner. The Indian made to retrieve them but was stopped in his tracks by a peremptory, "Leave them where they are." Then Salvatore laid the little girl on the table and bent over her. In profile now, he seemed to the Indian a bird of prey poised to strike. Salvatore was examining the tumor with his fingers. These two struck the Indian's imagination. They were long and amazingly supple and seemed to be able to bend not only downwards, but from side to side and even upwards. The Indian, normally a plucky man, tried to fight down the feeling of fear the extraordinary doctor had aroused in him. "Excellent, splendid," Salvatore was saying, as if in admiration of what he saw. The examination was over. Salvatore turned to the Indian. "Come in a month's time, when the moon's new again, and you'll have your little girl back healthy." And he took the girl behind the frost glass door. Meanwhile the black had led in the next patient, the old woman with a swollen leg. The Indian made a low bow in the direction of the frost glass door and went out. In exactly 28 days the frost glass door was opened again. The little girl, sporting a new dress, lively and apple-cheeked, appeared in the doorway. There was alarm in her eyes as she caught sight of her granddad. The Indian lunged forward, picked the girl up, smacked her a kiss and examined her throat. The tumor was gone. There was only a tiny reddish scar ere the girl had been operated upon. The child kept pushing her granddad away with her hands and had even cried out when, kissing her, he pricked her with his stubbly chin. He had to let her down. Salvatore came in. There was a flicker of a smile on his face as he patted the child's head and said, "Here, take your child. You were only just in time bringing her. Another few hours and even I would not have been able to recall her to life." The lips in the Indian's crinkled face quivered and tears came into his eyes. He gave the little girl another hug, then fell on his knees before Salvatore. "You saved my granddaughter's life," he said in a stifled voice. "A poor Indian has nothing but his own life to repay you with." "What do I want with your life?" wondered Salvatore. "I may be old, but there's strength in my arms yet," the Indian went on, not rising from his knees. "I'll take the little one to her mother, my daughter, and then come back. My life is now yours for what you've done for me. I will serve you like a dog. Please don't say no, I beg you." Salvatore pondered. He was chary of taking new servants. Not that he didn't need any. There was much work to do. Help Jim with the gardening, for instance. Come to think of it, he did need a servant. He would have preferred a black, to be sure, but this Indian fellow seemed all right. "You make me a gift of your life." "Very well. I accept it. When can you come?" "I'll be back before the first quarter's over," said the Indian, kissing the hem of Salvatore's smock. "What is your name?" "Cristobal, Cristo for short." "Go, Cristo. I'll be waiting for you." "Come on, my girlie," Cristo said to the child and picked her up again. She started to cry. Cristo hurried away. An orchard full of miracles. When Cristo turned up again a week later, Dr. Salvatore greeted him with a searching glance and said, "Now then, Cristo, pay attention to what I'm going to tell you. I'm taking you on. You'll have good pay and board." Cristo waved his hands. "I don't want anything so long as you let me serve you." "Be silent and listen," Salvatore cut him short. "You'll have everything as I said you would. But there's one condition. Keep your mouth shut about everything you see here. I'd sooner cut my tongue out with my own hands and throw it to the dogs than breathe a single word to anybody." "See, you don't have to do that," came Salvatore's warning. With that he summoned the white-smocked black and ordered him to take Cristo into the orchard and place him in Jim's charge. Bowing silently, the black took the Indian outside and across the courtyard to the iron gate in the inner wall. In response to the black's knock, a barking of dogs came from behind the wall, then the gate creaked and opened slowly. The black gave Cristo a light push, shouted something in throaty tones to the black who stood inside the gate, and went away. Cristo backed against the wall in fright. Charging at him were a pack of beasts with tawny black spotted fur. Had they been in the pampas, Cristo would not have hesitated in calling them jaguars. But these barked like dogs. Anyhow, there was no time to puzzle it out. Cristo sprinted for the nearest tree and was up it with an agility surprising in a man of his age. The black hissed at them, for all the world like an angry cobra, at once bringing them to. The beasts stopped their thunderous baying, lay down and put their muzzles on their forepaws, slanting their eyes up at their master. The black hissed again, this time to Cristo, and beckoned him to climb down. "What are you hissing there like a snake for? Swallowed your tongue, The black only gave an angry inarticulate sound. He must be dumb, Cristo thought, and remembered Salvatore's warning. Does Salvatore really cut out the tongues of those who betray his secrets? This poor blighter might be one of them. Sudden fear almost made Cristo lose his grip on the tree trunk. He wished to God he were on the right side of the great wall again. With his eye he measured the distance between his tree and the wall but saw he couldn't make it. Meanwhile the black had approached the tree, got hold of Cristo's foot and was tugging at it impatiently. There was nothing for it but to take the hint. Cristo sprang down, grinned his most engaging smile, stretched out his hand and said amiably, "Jim?" The black gave a nod. Cristo pumped his hand. Once in hell, play up to the devils, he thought. Aloud he asked, "Dumb?" There was no answer. "Got no tongue?" Still no answer. Even if he's got no tongue, Cristo thought, he could at least talk in signs. Instead, Jim took the Indian by hand, led him up to the tawny-skinned beasts and hissed something at them. The beasts rose, sniffed at Cristo and went calmly off. Cristo felt more at ease. Then Jim led him on a round of the orchard. After the bare stone-flagged yard, the orchard looked a paradise of blossom and verdure. Stretching eastwards, it gently sloped down almost to the very shoreline. Narrow alleys strewn with finely crushed reddish shells and lined with weird cacti, fleshy bluish-green agaves and yellowish-green flowers criss-crossed it between groves of peach and olive trees. These gave shade to lush grass, its deep green broken here and there by little white stone ponds and beds of bright many-colored flowers. A few fountains were sending high their jets of sparkling water to lend freshness to the air. The orchard vibrated with the singing of birds and the roaring of beasts. Never in his life had Cristo seen the strange birds and animals that met his eye at every turn. A six-legged lizard scuttled across the path, its greenish skin coppery in the bright sun. A double-headed snake was hanging from a tree, making Christo jump as it hissed at him with its two throats. A still louder hiss from the black, however, silenced it. Dropping from the tree, it disappeared among a border of rushes. Another long snake hurried away from the path where it had been basking, helping itself along with a pair of legs. In a little enclosure, near the walk, a pig was grunting, its large single eye fixed at Christo. Then a pair of large white rats, joined side to side, scuttered towards them along the reddish walk, looking for all the world like a double-headed, eight-legged monster. From time to time this dual creature went through a struggle. Each rat tried to pull its way, both squeaking their displeasure. But the right side invariably won. Grazing near the path was another pair of Siamese twins, fine fleece sheep this time. Unlike the rats, they never quarreled. They must have reached a common mind long ago. But it was the monster they met next that struck Christo's imagination most. It was a big pink dog with not a single hair on it but what looked like a little monkey, or the upper part of one at any rate, sticking out from its back. The dog came up to Christo and wagged its tail, while the little monkey kept jerking its head right and left, waving its arms, patting the dog on the back and gibbering at Christo. The Indian dug a hand into his trouser pocket, brought out a piece of sugar and was offering it to the monkey when somebody stopped his hand and hissed. It was Jim, whom Christo, engrossed by all those queer creatures, had clean forgotten. The old black explained by signs that he was not to feed the monkey. Cashing in on the interlude, a parakeet-headed sparrow swooped down at the piece of sugar which Christo still had between his fingers and carried it off to safety behind a bush. From farther away, in the middle of a meadow, came the lowing of a horse with a cow's head. A pair of llamas swept across the meadow, their horses' tails spreading out in flight. Strange creatures were crowding on Christo from all sides. Dogs with cats' heads, cocks waddling on webbed feet, horned boars, eagle-beaked ostriches, puma-bodied sheep. Christo thought he was having a nightmare. He rubbed his eyes, sprinkled his head with cool water from a pond, but nothing helped. In the ponds he saw snakes with fishes' heads and gills, fish with frogs' legs, enormous toads with bodies as long as a lizard's. And Christo again wished himself well outside the walls. Finally, Jim brought the Indian to a broad sand-strewn stretch in the middle of which stood a white marble Moorish-style villa, its arches and colonnades half screened behind the trunks of palm trees. Brass dolphin-shaped fountain spouts sent cascades of water into the pools where goldfishes frisked in the pellucid water. The biggest fountain of them all, opposite the main entrance, had the shape of a youth astride a dolphin. Perhaps it was Triton, the marine god of the ancients, with a winding horn pressed to his mouth. Obviously the work of a master sculptor, the group looked all but alive. Behind the villa there were a few outhouses, and still farther, a jungle of thorny cacti, with a white wall at the far end, showing through at places. Another wall, thought Christo. Jim led him into a small cool room. In his sign language he explained that Christo was to live there and then left him alone. The third wall. By and by Christo began finding his way about in the new strange world. It didn't take him long to find out that the animal population of the orchard was quite tame. With some he was soon even on terms of friendship. The dogs with jaguar skins, the cause of such scare on his first day in the orchard, followed him about, licking his hands. The llamas ate out of his hand. The parrots perched on his shoulder. The orchard and the animals were tended by 12 Negroes as dumb as Jim. At any rate Christo never heard them speak. They all went silent about their business. Jim was a sort of superintendent over them. He gave them their work and saw that they did it. Christo, much to his own surprise, had been appointed his deputy. His duties were not hard. There wasn't too much work and the food was plentiful. But the oppressive silence of the Negroes soon began to get him down. Besides, he was convinced that they had all had their tongues cut out. And every time Salvatore summoned him to the office, not that it was often, Christo thought his turn had come. But then something happened to allay his fears. One day he came across Jim lying fast asleep in the shade of an olive tree. The Negro was lying on his back, his mouth hanging open. Christo used the opportunity of looking for the Negro's tongue and, to his relief, found it there all right. Dr. Salvatore's day was well planned and busy. From 7 to 9 he received patients, from 9 to 11 he operated upon those who required it. Then he went to his villa to do laboratory work. This involved operating on animals and studying them. An experiment over, the animals went back to the orchard. Christo, who dusted the rooms in the villa, managed occasionally to slip into the laboratories. The things he saw there would haunt his imagination for long afterwards. Hearts and kidneys carved out of their bodies lived on in glass jars. Amputated limbs seemed to be waiting for their owner. His skin-crawling Christo hurried out. He preferred to be among the live monsters of the orchard. Salvatore seemed to trust the old Indian, but not beyond the third wall. And it was just what was on the other side that Christo was so eager to see. One midday, when everybody was having a siesta, he stole up to the wall. Children's voices floated over to him. They spoke an Indian dialect he knew, but intermingling with them, as if in a quarrel, there were other voices, thin and squeaky, speaking what seemed to Christo a very peculiar brand of Indian. Coming across Christo in the orchard one day, Salvatore halted and, looking him straight in the eye as was his wont, he said, "You've been with me a month now, Christo, and I'm pleased with your work. One of the servants in the lower orchard has fallen ill. You will replace him. You will see many new things there. But mind that little conversation we had about your tongue unless you want to lose it." "I've almost forgotten the use of it with all your dumb Negroes around, doctor," said Christo. "Excellent. Silence pays, you know. Incidentally, do you know your way in the Andes? I was born and bred in the mountains." "Splendid. I will soon want to replenish my zoo with a new batch of birds and animals. I'm going to take you with me. You may go now. Jim will take you to the lower orchard." Accustomed though he was to the wonders of the place, Christo had more surprises coming. In the spacious sunlit meadow naked children were playing with monkeys. Almost all Argentina's Indian tribes seemed to be represented there by children ranging in age from about 3 to 12 years. All of them were patients of Salvatore's. Many had undergone complicated operations and owed their very lives to Salvatore's skill. Once round the corner, the children recuperated playing in the orchard till they were strong enough to be taken home. Tailless monkeys with not a tuft of hair on their bodies kept them company. But what really amazed Christo was that all of them could speak some kind of Indian. They joined in the children's games, quarreling with them and shouting in thin, high-pitched voices, though on the whole they were quite a friendly crowd. Sometimes Christo was inclined to think they were human beings after all. The lower orchard, as Christo soon found out, was smaller than the other one, sloped steeper seawards and ended in a big cliff rising sheer like a wall. Somewhere behind it was the invisible ocean, revealed by the roar of the surf. A closer look showed that the cliff was man-made and, in fact, nothing more than another wall, a fourth one, for in it Christo found an iron door, painted gray to blend with the cliff and furthermore screened by a thick growth of wisteria. Christo listened. The roar of the surf was the only sound. Where did the small door lead to? The seaside? Suddenly there was a hubbub of children's voices behind him. Christo wheeled round and saw the children staring up into the sky. He also looked up and spotted a small red balloon slowly floating up and across the orchard. The wind was heading it seawards. An ordinary children's balloon, it seemed to stir Christo deeply. As soon as the servant that had been ill reported to work, the old Indian went to see Salvatore. "Soon we're leaving for the Andes, doctor. It might be some time before we come back. May I go and see my daughter and her child?" Salvatore didn't like his servants leaving the premises, and he didn't speak at once. Christo stood waiting, his eyes boldly meeting the cold stare of Salvatore's. "Remember your pledge," said Salvatore. "I wouldn't like you to lose your tongue. You may go, but see you're back within 3 days. Wait." Salvatore went into the other room and brought back with him a Sioux leather pouch. "There's something for your granddaughter, and for your silence too. In ambush. If he doesn't come this time I'll cut the painter as far as the pair of you are concerned. I'll be damned if I won't. I'll get smarter POPLE onto the job," Zurita was saying, tugging impatiently at his bristly mustache. He wore a white town suit and a Panama hat. They had met well outside Buenos Aires, at a point where the pampas were taking over from the maize fields. Baltasar, in a white blouse and a pair of blue-striped trousers, was squatting by the roadside, plucking dejectedly at the sun-parched brittle blades of grass. He himself was beginning to regret having sent his brother to spy on Salvatore. Though Baltasar's elder by 10 years, Christo was strong and lithe and as cunning as a pampa cat. But he was not reliable. He couldn't settle down to anything. There had been a time he took up farming but soon dropped it, thoroughly bored. Then he ran a dockside tavern till he drank himself out of house and home. Lately Christo had been earning a precarious living on the windy side of the law. With his sharp wits he could ferret out anything but was not to be trusted with much. He might even betray his own brother if it were made worth his while. Baltasar knew his man and was as worried as Zarita. "Are you sure Christo saw that balloon, anyhow?" Baltasar shrugged his shoulders. He would have much preferred to drop the whole affair there and then go home and have a glass of cold water laced with wine in the peace and quiet of his shop. A cloud of dust mushroomed over the turn of the road and was lit up by the last rays of the setting sun. A shrill drawn-out whistle was heard. Baltasar livened up. "That's him," he said. "Not too damned soon either," said Zarita. Striding briskly towards them was Christo, no longer a doddering old Indian with a sick grandchild come to see the doctor. Giving another whistle, Christo came nearer and saluted the pair. "Well, have you seen the sea devil?" Zarita asked him by way of greeting. "Not yet, but he's there all right. Salvatore keeps him behind four walls. The main thing is Salvatore trusts me. That sick granddaughter did it." Christo laughed, narrowing his sly eyes. "She nearly gave the whole show away though. When she recovered, I mean. Here's me, picking her up and kissing her like a loving granddad, and she kicks away and fairly bursts into tears," and he laughed again. "Where did you get the girl?" asked Zarita. "Money's hard to get, girls aren't," said Christo. "And her mother's happy too. I got 5 pesos, she got her daughter back healthy." That he had also received a sizable sum from Salvatore he didn't trouble to mention. All the more understandable this, since he wasn't going to share it with the child's mother. A regular zoo, that place, tilde chock full of monsters. And Christo started his story. "That might all be very interesting," Zarita said after some time and lighted a cigar, "but you haven't seen the goods. What do you propose to do next?" "Make a trip to the Andes." And Christo told them of Salvatore's plan. "Splendid," exulted Zarita. "We'll attack the place as soon as Salvatore's party leaves and ride the sea devil away by force. The place is so out of the way one could do it in broad daylight and nobody the wiser." Christo shook his head. "The jaguars will bite your heads off. Even if they don't, you won't find the sea devil, not until I've found out where he is." "Then here's what we'll do," Zarita said, after thinking it over for a while. "We'll ambush Salvatore's party, take him prisoner and hold him to ransom. The sea devil LL be the price." With a slick movement of his hand, Christo drew a cigar out of Zarita's breast pocket. "Many thanks. An ambush is better. But Salvatore's sure to pull some trick on you. Promise to deliver the goods and never do it or something. Those Spaniards." The rest of the sentence was lost in coughing. "Well, what do you suggest?" Zarita said irritably. "Patience. Salvatore trusts me, but only as far as 3 walls go. He must be made to trust me as he trusts his own shadow, then he'll show me the sea devil of his own free will." Well, Salvatore will be attacked by bandits." He jabbed his finger at Zarita's chest, and delivered from them by an honest Araucanian. He tapped his own chest. "Then there will be no secrets for Christo in Salvatore's house. And no lack of golden pesos," he added in an aside for himself. "That's not a bad idea." Then they agreed on the road Chris should suggest to Salvatore. "On the eve of the departure I'll throw a red stone over the wall. Have everything ready." And Christo was gone. Though the plan of attack was well worked out, an unforeseen circumstance nearly made it fall through. Zarita, Baltasar and a dozen cutthroats hired in the dockside, wearing gaucho clothes, all well armed and mounted, had taken up stations alongside the Pampas road. The night was dark. The gang listened hard for the hoofbeats. Suddenly the bandits heard the chugging of an engine, quickly drawing nearer. 2 powerful headlights stabbed the darkness, and before they knew where they were, a big black car had rushed by. It had never entered Christo's head that Salvatore could travel in this new, unconventional way. Zarita was beside himself with rage and disappointment. Baltasar was amused. "Take it easy, master," he said. "They travel by night and will rest in the daytime. We'll overtake them." And he spurred his horse on. The rest followed suit. They had ridden hard for the better part of 2 hours when they spotted the glow of a campfire ahead. "That's them. Something's happened. Wait for me here while I do some scouting." And dismounting, Baltasar crawled snake-like into the darkness. He returned in an hour. The car's out of order. They're repairing it. Christo keeps watch. Come on, let's hurry and get it done with. It was a quick job. The bandits took Salvatore's party by surprise, just when they had repaired the car, and tied Salvatore, Christo and the three Negroes hand and foot with not a shot fired. One of the bandits, who acted as chieftain, Zarita preferring to stay in the background, told Salvatore that they were prepared to ransom him for a big sum of money and named it. "You'll have it," said Salvatore. "That's for you. And it's double if you want your men set free too," said the bandit following up his advantage. "I haven't got that much money available," Salvatore said, after a pause. "Finish him off," the bandits shouted all at once. "Pipe, I'll give you till dawn to think it over," said the bandit's spokesman. Salvatore shrugged his shoulders as he repeated, "I haven't got that much available." His coolness impressed even the bandits. Taking Salvatore and his men aside, the bandits ransacked the car and found the spirits intended for collections. Soon they were drunk and sleeping on the ground. At the crack of dawn somebody crawled softly to Salvatore's side. "It's me," came Christo's voice. "I managed to untie myself and have killed the bandit on watch. The rest are drunk and incapable. Let's hurry." They got in, the Negro driver started the engine, the car leapt forward. Behind there were shouts and a few rifle shots rang out. Salvatore pressed Christo's hand. Only after Salvatore's departure did Zarita learn that Salvatore had been willing to pay. Wouldn't it have been simpler just to take it than try to kidnap a sea devil nobody knew was worth anything? It's all over bar the shouting, though, he thought. And he waited for news from Christo. The amphibian. Christo had hoped that Salvatore would send for him and say, "You've saved my life, Christo. From now on there will be no secrets for you in this place. Come with me, I'll show you the sea devil," or words to that effect. But Salvatore fell short of Christo's hopes. He generously rewarded the brave Araucanian and became all wrapped up in his research again. So Christo started his own research. The secret door proved a hard nut to crack, but his patience was rewarded in the end. One day he pressed a boss on it and it swung slowly open, like the door to a strong room. Christo slipped through and the door swung shut, taking him a little aback. He examined it, pressing every boss in turn. The door didn't open. "A fine trap I caught myself in," he muttered. "Well, I might as well have a look round." He found himself in a hollow, thickly overgrown with trees and bushes and walled in on all sides with man-made cliffs. The plants Christo saw were of the kind usually growing on humid soils. The big shady trees did not let sunlight through to the numerous rivulets burbling underneath. Fountains, scattered among the trees, added to the moisture in the air. The place was as damp as the low banks of the Mississippi. Standing in the middle of the grounds was a small flat-roofed stone house with lichen-clad walls. The green blinds on the windows were pulled down. The house had a not lived-in look. Christo reached the far end of the orchard. Judging by the rustle of pebbles that came to him from behind the wall, the ocean was close at hand. So this is as far as Salvatore's holding goes, thought Christo. In front of the wall was a huge square tree-lined swimming pool no less than 15 feet deep. At Christo's approach some creature he didn't have time to see beyond a glimpse dashed from under the trees and across to the swimming pool, making a big splash as it plunged in. Christo's heart was beating 19 to the dozen as he went closer. That must be him, the sea devil, he thought. He was going to see him at last. The Indian looked into the clear water. On the bottom on white stone tiles crouched a big monkey. There was fear mingled with curiosity in its return glance. And it was breathing under the water. Spellbound, Christo couldn't tear his glance away from its sides, heaving and falling, heaving and falling. Presently, with a start, Christo recovered himself and gave a short laugh. So the sea devil, that fisherman's bogey, was just a monkey that could breathe underwater. Christo was at once glad and disappointed. Descriptions of the monster had led him to expect something quite different. What tricks fear and fancy play on us, thought the old Indian. Now it was time for him to make good his retreat. Christo retraced his steps to the secret door, climbed a big tree by the wall, got onto it and jumped down, hoping to God his old legs would not trip on him. No sooner Christo was safely on the ground than he heard Salvatore's voice. "Hey, Christo, where are you?" The Indian grabbed a rake lying on the path and applied himself to gathering dry leaves. I'm here, he shouted. Come along, Cristo, Salvatore said, striding onto the path and across to the secret door. To open you press here, and he pressed the very boss Cristo had just used. A bit late, aren't you? I've seen your devil, thought Cristo. They went into the orchard. Salvatore led the way past the lichen-clad house straight to the swimming pool. The monkey was still underwater, crouching where he had left it, letting out little bubbles of air at each exhalation. At the sight of the monkey, Cristo went through a little show of surprise, which, almost at once, turned to genuine. For Salvatore was paying no attention to the monkey, apart from waving his hand at it as if dismissing it. Promptly the monkey swam up, scrambled out, shook itself and climbed a tree. Salvatore bent down and pressed in a small green panel, concealed in the grass. There was a hollow rumble and hidden hatches yawned open all along the bottom of the pool. The water gushed through. In a few minutes the pool was dry. The hatches snapped shut. An iron ladder, reaching down to the bottom, slid into view from its place somewhere on the side of the pool. Come on, Cristo. They climbed down. Salvatore stepped on a tile and another hatch opened in the center of the pool. Iron steps led down into the darkness. Cristo followed Salvatore down into a corridor, faintly illumined by the light falling through the hatch. As they proceeded, it soon gave way to complete darkness. The echo of their footsteps rang dully in the corridor. We're nearly there, Cristo. Salvatore halted and ran his hand along the wall. There was a click and floods of brilliant light. They stood in a stalactite cave, facing a brass door with lions' heads gripping brass rings in their jaws. Salvatore pulled at one of the rings. The stout door swung open, letting them into a dark hall. There was another click as a globular opaque lamp lit up a big cave whose far wall was all glass. Salvatore worked the switches. The cave was dark again, then several powerful searchlights threw their beams into what looked like an immense aquarium just behind the glass wall. Fish frisked among the seaweeds and corals. Suddenly Cristo saw a human-like creature, with huge globular eyes and frog's paws, step out from behind a tangled growth of seaweeds. The creature swam with easy grace towards the glass wall, in a close-up of immense eyes and silvery blue scales, nodded to Salvatore, entered an all-glass cubicle that was at one side of the wall and shut the glass door. The cubicle was quickly emptying. The stranger opened the other door and was in the cave. Take off your gloves and goggles, said Salvatore. The newcomer obediently took the things off and Cristo faced a slim, good-looking young man. Please meet Ichthyander the Amphibian, or the Sea Devil, as he is also known, Salvatore introduced the young man to Cristo. The young man was smiling amiably as he offered his hand to the Indian. Hello, he said in Spanish. Cristo pressed the offered hand. He was too stunned for speech. The black who's serving Ichthyander is ill, went on Salvatore. You'll stay with Ichthyander for a time. I'll make it permanent if you give me satisfaction. Cristo nodded in silence. A day of Ichthyanders. It is still night but dawn is near. The air, warm and damp, is full of aromas of magnolia, tuberose and mignonette. Not a leaf stirs. All is quiet. The crunch of sand underfoot is the only sound. Swinging from his belt in time to his step as he goes along the garden walk are his dagger, a pair of goggles and webbed gloves and swimming shoes. The path runs between black blobby shapes of trees and bushes, only visible by comparison. Ichthyander brushes a branch every now and then, sprinkling dewy drops on his hair and cheek, still warm with sleep. The path veers to the right and dips a little. The air gets perceptibly damper. Ichthyander feels stone flags and halts. Unhurriedly he dons his swimming gear. Then he exhales all the air from his lungs and plunges into the pool. The water is invigoratingly cool, sending a prickly sensation through his gills, which are now moving rhythmically. Man has turned fish. A few powerful strokes take Ichthyander down to the very bottom of the pool and a little way along it. His outstretched hand meets the first iron bracket sunk in the stone wall, then another, then a few more, till he's in the tunnel and walking bent forward against the incoming cold current. A push with both feet and he's up but feeling as if he has plunged into a warm bath. It's where the warmer water from the ponds travels to the open sea. Ichthyander turns over on his back, folds his arms and drifts head first, letting the warm current do his work for him. The end of the tunnel is drawing near. He can already hear the rustle of stones and shells where the spring in the seafloor at the tunnel mouth throws up its jet of hot water. The amphibian turns over for a better view. But it's still pitch dark. He stretches his arm forward and the next moment finds the iron grill, its bars thick with slimy seaweeds and rough barnacles. For some time he fumbles with the intricate lock. Presently the heavy circular door swings slowly open. Ichthyander slips through and as he heads for the ocean hears the lock click behind him. It is still dark underwater. Only below, in the black depths, there is an occasional bluish sparkle of noctilucent and the dull reddish glow of a passing jellyfish. But dawn is almost there and the phosphorescent creatures of the sea one by one extinguish their tiny lamps. Breathing comes less easy to Ichthyander. There are constant little pricks in his gills. That means he's already past the rocky headland and in the stream of muddy water from a river that flows into the ocean there. I wonder how the river fish can live in that silty water at all, he thinks. Must have tougher gills. Ichthyander turns sharply to his right, due south, then goes down till he strikes the clean water cold current that travels along shore northwards to a point where it veers to the east under the impact of the mighty Parana River pouring into the ocean. Its bottom layer flows rather deeply, but its top layer, Ichthyander's destination, is only about 50 feet below the surface. He can rest now. The clear waters of the current will take him a long way out into the ocean. He can even have a nap while it's still dark and the fish of prey are not up and about yet. Sleep comes sweetest when dawn is near. While he sleeps his skin registers every little change in temperature and water pressure. Presently his ears detect a hollow clank, then another and still another. Those are anchor chains. A few miles away, in the bay where he's drifting to, asleep, smacks are weighing anchor for dawn fishing. Then, superimposing on all other sounds, comes a steady rumble, far off but powerful. That comes from the screws of the Horrocks, a large British liner plying between Liverpool and Buenos Aires. The liner must still be another 20 miles off, but that's nothing for sound. In seawater it travels at a speed of some 50 miles per minute. By night the Horrocks is a sight to feast your eyes on, a gay town, brightly illuminated and floating. But to see her at night Ichthyander has to leave for the ocean in the evening. It is a different Horrocks that makes harbor in Buenos Aires soon after sun up, all her lights out, bulky and blaring. But he'd better come out of his nap. The liner will soon have all the inhabitants of the ocean wide awake, what with her screws, engines and lights. Surely the slight change of pressure that alerted him a few moments ago was caused by dolphins, always the first to sense the approach of the liner. They must be well on their way to the liner by now, eager to meet her. As the harbor and bay come to life the chugging of ships' engines closes upon Ichthyander. He opens his eyes, shakes his head to drive away the last of sleep and propels himself up. Surfacing, he takes a careful look round for any boat or schooner, sees none anywhere near enough to bother, and treads water. There are only cormorants and seagulls around him, skimming the water often so closely that their chests or wingtips touch its mirror-like surface, sending tiny wavelets scurrying away. The cawing of the white seagulls is like a child crying, swishing with its mighty wings through the air directly above Ichthyander so that he fancies he's struck by a minor gale. A huge snow-white albatross heads shorewards. The red-beaked orange-clawed bird has black fringed wings, every inch of 12 feet from tip to tip. It's not without envy that Ichthyander watches it go. What wouldn't he give to have just such wings? Night is retreating behind the distant mountains in the west. The eastern sky is slowly turning rosy. Barely perceptible ripples appear on the ocean, like so many tiny streaks of gold. When the sea gulls soar up they turn pink. Blue patterns crease the pale level surface of the sea as a gentle breeze starts to blow. It gathers force, the restless blue becomes deeper. The first yellowish tongues of foam begin to lap the beaches. The water closest inshore turns green. A string of schooners comes into sight, low on the water. Ichthyander remembers his father's orders to avoid people and goes down in a steep dive. Soon he's back in the cold current that will carry him further offshore, eastwards. In the lilac twilight that reigns at this depth red, yellow and brown fish flitter about like a motley swarm of butterflies. A buzzing sound comes from above, for a moment the water darkens. That must be a seaplane flying low. Once, he recalls, a seaplane landed on the water close to him. He went for a closer look, held onto a float and came very near to losing his life. All of a sudden the seaplane took off and Ichthyander was whisked some 30 feet aloft before he recovered enough presence of mind to jump for his life. Ichthyander looks up. The diffused ball of sun is almost plumb overhead, indicating that midday is close at hand. The surface of the water is no longer a vast mirror that faithfully reflects the seabed where it is raised, the bigger fish and Ichthyander. Like a funhouse mirror, it is now distorted and assuming an infinite variety of shapes. Ichthyander comes up. As he draws near the surface, he becomes aware of a choppy sea. Presently his head and shoulders are clear and he's riding up on the crest of a wave, then down, then up again. Oh ho, the sea is choppy. There's quite a surf already where the swell of the sea breaks upon the shore, roaring lustily, overturning big boulders. The water next to the white foamy line has been churned a yellowish green while a sharp southwesterner goes on whipping up waves, tearing off white tips of foam. Every now and then spray blows into Ichthyander's face, giving him intense pleasure. Why is it, Ichthyander wonders, that when you swim through the waves they seem deep blue but when you look back they are much paler? Shoals of flying fish skim away. Gliding up over the wave tops and down across the troughs they fly some 40 feet and touch down, and fly up again. The gulls dart about, crying. The fastest birds there are, frigates, cut the air with their wide wings. The one over there tilde with a huge curved beak and sharp claws, dark brown feathers shot with green and an orange-hued crop is a male. His mate, white-breasted and with paler plumage, keeps at his side. Suddenly she drops down like a stone and the next moment is up again, a silver-scaled fish struggling in her beak. Albatrosses are soaring aloft, a sure sign of a storm brewing. Somewhere up there, dauntless birds with the undignified name of screamer are already speeding to meet the inky clouds. The fishing smacks are less eager to encounter the storm. Under a full press of sail they seek the shelter of the harbor. Greenish twilight reigns below the waves and the amphibian tells his way by the big ball of sun that can still be seen through the double screen of gathering clouds and water. He's got to reach the oyster ground before the sun is blotted out by clouds if he's to have his lunch at all. Swimming frog-wise he spurts on. From time to time he turns over on his back to take his bearings by the blob of sunlight overhead which is only a shade lighter than the surrounding bluish-green semi-darkness. His gills and skin are of great help too, registering little changes in water content. Near oyster grounds water is richer in oxygen and feels altogether lighter and more pleasant to the body, but there's more salt in it. So Ichthyander tastes the water. Like an old sea wolf that can tell the approach of land by signs revealed only to him, Ichthyander is sure of his way. At last to his right and left loom up the long familiar outlines of underwater cliffs. There is a piece of level ground between them with another wall of a cliff behind. Ichthyander calls the spot his underwater harbor, for it's calm in the worst of storms. It's a harbor for multitudes of fish as well, the water is as thick with them as a kettle of chowder. Small ones, with a yellow band across the body and a yellow tail. Others with several dark bands running almost diagonally, and numerous brighter kinds, magenta, orange, and azure. They shy away in shoals, then reappear from nowhere again. When you come up, fish are milling round you all the way, but you look down and there are none. Ichthyander puzzled over this for a long time till he caught a fish. Its body was the size of his palm but flat as a pancake. Then he knew. Now for his lunch. On the patch of level seafloor oysters are plentiful. Ichthyander settles down beside a thriving colony, reclines at ease and preases open the first mollusk that comes to his hand. The choice tidbit goes into his mouth. He has a way of eating underwater that makes it an easy thing. Taking a mouthful he ejects water through half-clenched teeth with a movement that has become automatic with him. Naturally he swallows a little water with his food but he's used to it. Seaweeds sway round him, the perforated greenery of the agars, the pinnate grass-green leaves of the Mexican collarpaw and a tender pink kind of algae. But today, because of the storm and resultant darkness, they all look a uniform somber gray. A muffled peal of thunder penetrates down to Ichthyander's abode. He looks up. There's a dark spot right above his head. Now what could that be? His lunch over he can go up and investigate. Gliding upward along the cliff face he approaches the surface and sees a huge albatross rocking up and down, its orange-hued legs within a tempting reach. Up go his hands and close round the bird's legs. What fun! Bewildered, the albatross unfolds its mighty wings in an upward rush, dragging Ichthyander clear. Once in the air Ichthyander's body regains weight and the albatross drops heavily down, covering him with its soft feathery breast. Ichthyander doesn't wait for the giant bird to start pecking his head, dives and the next moment breaks the surface again some distance off. The albatross is winging its way out to sea and out of sight beyond the mountainous seas. Ichthyander is floating on his back. The storm has passed by on its way to the east. Thunder rumbles, receding. Rain is pouring down in sheets. Ichthyander lies back, his eyes half closed with exquisite pleasure. By and by he opens them, turns over and treads water for a better look round. He's on the crest of a colossal wave. Sky, ocean, wind, rain, all are one big wet whirl, roaring in its primordial fury. As if in impotent rage, little beards of foam tremble on the wave crests and run in angry zigzags down their sides. What with the swell from the storm and the savage wind, the mountains of seas pile one on top of the other and crash down to pile up again. What strikes fear into the earthly man is great fun to Ichthyander. Of course, waves can be dangerous for him too, but like a fish, he knows their ways. There are many kinds of waves. Some will toss you up and down, others will turn you feet first before you know where you are. He also knows what goes on under the waves, and how waves disappear when the wind has died down. It's the small waves that go first, then the big ones, but the dead swell stays for a long time afterwards. He delights in turning somersaults in the surf, though that isn't without its danger either. Once an extra big wave overturned him and threw him against a rock unconscious. That would have been the end for an ordinary human being, but Ichthyander came to in the water, only slightly woe. RSE for the experience. There is no rain any longer, it has shifted, as has the storm, eastwards. The wind has veered too, blowing in warm blasts from the tropical north. Heralded by patches of blue sky torn in the clouds, the sun thrusts its rays through seawards. In the southeast across a still menacingly black sky a rainbow throws its double arc. It's an entirely different ocean that Ichthyander beholds now, no longer black with frothy fury, but a blue cheerful ocean, with emerald patches where sun rays have struck its breast. The sun. In one moment it has changed everything: sky, ocean, shore, distant mountains, beyond recognition. And oh, how wonderful the air is after the storm. Ichthyander now gulps in the exhilarating sea air, now breathes through his gills. No one knows better than Ichthyander how easy comes gill breathing after a storm has mixed sky with ocean, making the water a good deal richer in oxygen. No one, that is, among men, but the numerous fish, and the sea animals too, can appreciate this. After a storm is over, the sea depths, the crevices of the cliffs, the thickets of coral and sponge discharge their occupants. Small fry show the way to the bigger fish, and when it's quite calm again, to soft weak jellyfish, transparent, weightless shrimps, delicate porpita and various ctenophora, including the most beautiful representative of the group, the Cestus veneris. A sunray strikes the water close to Ichthyander, turning it a bright green. The glitter of tiny air bubbles, the hiss of foam. Ichthyander's playmates, the dolphins, are gamboling nearby, throwing him gay, mischievous glances. Their shiny black backs flash into view in the waves as they chase one another playfully, snorting. Ichthyander laughs and joins in the game. He feels as though this ocean and these dolphins, the sky and sun, were all created expressly for him to enjoy. Ichthyander raises his head and screws up his eyes at the sun. It is in the west of the sky. Evening is near, but today he doesn't feel like returning home early. He is going to rock on the waves until the first stars appear in the dark sky. Yet lolling about soon tires him. And then, how could he forget all the small sea creatures that are perishing that very moment? He treads water and looks in the direction of the distant shore. For the sand spit, that's where his help is really needed. There where the ocean surf is playing havoc. After a storm it hurls ashore heaps of seaweeds and sea creatures, all kinds of fishes, crabs, jellyfish, starfish, sometimes even an unwary dolphin. Jellyfish soon perish, but some of the fish manage to wriggle their way back. So do most of the crabs. In fact, they themselves leave the water for the beach to prey on storm victims. And it does his heart good to come to their rescue. For hours he roams the beach in search of what it is not too late to rescue. It gives him real pleasure to see a fish, thrown into the water, splash with its tail and swim away. Or, still more, to see a fish at first floating lifeless side or belly up come at last to life. Picking up a large fish he will carry it seawards, pressing its wriggling body to his laughing, as he talks to it in soothing accents. Of course, he would have eaten that very fish without any compunction had he been out in the ocean and hungry. But that's an evil of necessity. Here, on the beach, he is the sea dweller's patron, friend and savior. Usually Ichthyander returns home as he left using the underwater current. But today he doesn't feel like going underwater for long, so beautiful are the ocean and sky. He dives, swims underwater and breaks surface again, not unlike a seabird hunting fish. The last rays of sun are gone. The yellow band is dwindling in the western horizon. Gloomy waves like gray shadows chase one another. Compared with the warm water, the air has a nip in it. It's dark, but Ichthyander feels safe. There's nobody to attack him at this hour of quiet that divides day and night. Here is what he needs: the southbound current flowing quite close to the ocean's surface. The swell which is still felt makes the underwater river rise and fall a little as it traces its slow course from the hot north down to the cold south. A great deal lower and in the opposite direction runs a cold current. Ichthyander makes good use of both of them when his trips take him along the coast. The warm current will carry him all the way home. He only has to keep awake so as not to overshoot the tunnel mouth as he once did. Stretching his arms behind his head and out to the side by way of exercise, and pulling his legs apart and slowly back together, he lets himself be carried southwards. The warm water and slow movements have a soothing effect on him. As Ichthyander looks up, he sees a heaven dotted with stars as small as specks of dust. Those must be Noctiluci, rising to the ocean's surface with their tiny lanterns lit up. Here and there in the darkness he sees bluish and pinkish luminous nebulae, tight clusters of minute luminous animals. Balls emitting mild greenish light sail slowly by. Shedding light quite close to Ichthyander is a jellyfish looking for all the world like a lamp under an elaborate shade of lace with a long fringe. The fringe stirs as in a light breeze at every movement of the jellyfish. In the shallows, starfish have already put on lights. In the depths below, the lights of big fish of prey cruise at speed. They chase one another, circle, die out and flicker up afresh. Another shallow. The bizarre trunks and twigs of coral are illuminated from within in blue, pink, green and white. Some corals flicker wankingly, others gleam like red-hot metal. On land at night you can see the stars, far off and tiny, sometimes the moon. Here there are thousands of stars, thousands of moons, thousands of small multicolored suns, all radiating soft delicate light. Night in the ocean is infinitely more beautiful than night on land. To compare them, Ichthyander breaks the surface again. The air has become warmer. The dark blue heaven spread overhead is thickly studded with stars. A silver moon rides low above the horizon. A silver runs from it across the ocean. From off the harbor comes a low prolonged hoot. That is the giant Horrocks, getting ready for the return voyage. Hey, but it's late. Dawn is not far off. He has been gone for nearly 24 hours. Father will definitely scold him. Ichthyander heads for the tunnel, thrusts his hand through the iron bars, opens the grill and swims on in complete darkness. He is now in the lower, cold, current that runs from the sea to the garden ponds. A light knock on his shoulder wakes him up. He's in the pool. Quickly he comes up, starts breathing through his lungs, taking in the air fragrant with familiar flower scents. A few minutes later he's fast asleep in bed to please his father.